It's 2024 and Skyrim just got a new DLC. And honestly, this is an even bigger deal than Skyrim just getting a new DLC, as this is the moment many of us have been waiting for literal years now. Because what I'm talking about today is the Bards College Expansion for Skyrim. This was not made by Bethesda Game Studios, but instead it was made by King Gath Creations, a team of developers that are making DLC-sized experiences for Skyrim, and of course, King Gath is the legendary author of Sim Settlements for Fallout 4, what I considered the best Fallout 4 mod ever, which may have just been passed by Fallout London, but King Gath Creations was kind enough to send me an early copy to review this one, and yeah, this is it. We have finally hit that point where we are getting a DLC-sized and professional quality paid mod for Skyrim. As just right off the bat, this is by far the single best paid mod I have ever played for really any video game ever, but particularly for Skyrim. It is levels above everything else in terms of value for your money, but also just in terms of how high quality this is. And you can buy it right now on the Creation Store in Skyrim for $10, just like a regular DLC. So as the title does suggest, this will be a major expansion on the Bards College in Skyrim. It'll implement a fully voiced new questline, and this is professional quality voice acting, several new mechanics that you can learn and use over the course of this new questline and the rest of the game after the fact, as well as a fair share of new items and abilities, and many of these are incredibly powerful. And the custom content for this one starts out in what I think is a really cool way, because you're just doing the typical Bards College quest, but now you're going to have a new companion that'll introduce you into a lot of the new and custom content. So the overall quest flow is exactly the same. Many of you will likely recognize almost all of this, but now you'll have a Bards College representative with Helvana explaining some of the things we find in Dead Men's Respite.
It's a familiar feeling, but I don't know. Perhaps we should keep following the spirit. Let's just hope it remains friendly.
Opening some of the doors for us if we want her to, and just generally commenting on what is going on, because Helvana is also conducting their own research in this dungeon on behalf of the Bards College.
The inscriptions, they glowed, and you... Fascinating.
I'll play a few clips of the voice work throughout this video, but in my experience, this was all professional quality voice acting. And even beyond that, in this entire mod, I never once encountered a bug or even a bad sounding voice. In vanilla Skyrim, this initial quest is the bulk of the Bards College content, but with this new DLC, things are dramatically expanded, so the Bards College now gets a proper faction questline, because as this initial quest does conclude, you'll then be introduced into several new teachers and masters at the Bards College, and each of these are going to have their own abilities and activities for you to do for them. Sledrig is the main one. He's going to be your avenue for the main quest in this DLC, and over the course of that questline, learning some incredibly powerful new shouts, as well as even new abilities around shouts. The new questline overall took me about 6 hours in total, but as you'll see, that's really just the beginning of this DLC. A massive chunk of this DLC are new mechanics and interactions, so it's kind of hard to put an exact time number on all of that. But the new quests are a ton of fun. It opens up somewhat mysterious. You'll have that initial simple objectives for the NPCs as they get to know you and eventually accept you into the college. But early on, they're all kind of pretending that Bards College is really just about songs and wordplay. But in those initial quests, you are fed a steady flow of hints that there are deeper powers here, and after learning an initial batch of new abilities, the meat of the new questline will open up as you work with Sledrig to learn new powers and take on a serious threat in Skyrim. Obviously, I don't want to spoil too much about that, but you do have some of those epic quest moments as you jointly take on enemies, explore totally new dungeons, and many of these are puzzle dungeons with new mechanics, as well as, of course, interact with a ton of new and professionally voice-acted NPCs.
Me? Was an orphan, you see. Thankfully adopted. Nord mother, imperial father. Good people. Gave me a good education.
All of the voice acting, writing, and even roleplay options from this were just top tier. There's always plenty of dialogue to gain background or additional information and lore on what's going on. And even though, yeah, we're kind of in a paid mod territory still here, I would say this is high enough quality that you can add this DLC to someone's game and they wouldn't be able to tell it's not made by Bethesda. Honestly, they might not even be able to tell it's not vanilla Skyrim. The flow of all of these quests and how it ties into the Bards College is so seamless that it just feels like it was always meant to be there. As well as towards the end of this questline, you are left with some very big choices that I personally found genuinely hard to make. The questline overall is actually laid out fairly similar to Sim Settlements, intermixing high quality quest content with learning new abilities and mechanics, and then the follow-up quests will have you reinforcing and actually using those new mechanics. So early on, Sledrig will teach you how to create the new resonating shouts. These will basically be an upgrade for an existing shout in Skyrim, and basically every shout is eligible for this. The upgraded shouts will get some new sounds, some new visual effects,
Ghost! Ghost!
But also some actual effects and stat boosts to them. The shout will be more powerful as a resonating version. Upgrading your shouts isn't free though. In addition to the dragon soul you'll need, these new resonating crystal items will also be required, which you'll of course find doing the questline, and to actually unlock the enhanced shout, you'll even have to defeat a copy of yourself. The learning of this new content will take place in this new plane, making it all just a lot easier and far more enjoyable, as well as this new plane is going to be how you access the new skill tree, because yes, this also includes a totally new bard-themed skill tree. You gain these new bardic inspirations, which will act as your skill points from doing Bards College quests, learning shouts, and a bunch of other things related to the college in general, and then you could spend these inspirations to enhance shouts even further or enhance some of your music playing ability. And some of these can get really strong, lowering the cooldown of using various shouts, increasing the damage dealt by them, and a ton of other cool options. And like, yeah, just right off the bat, having an enhanced version of any shout in Skyrim is really cool, but these have other functions as well. Like I mentioned before, during some of these new quests and dungeons, there are puzzles, and you're gonna have to use some of these resonating shouts to get past those puzzles. So it's not like it's just a character buff. The questline actually recognizes and uses this as well. In addition to the fact that over the course of this questline, you'll be learning totally new shouts that are added into Skyrim with this DLC. Some of these are used during those quests to complete certain puzzles, and there's even a whole new system for learning these particularly ancient shouts and a new NPC that can direct you around Skyrim to find where you could get more of these. This really makes up the core of the overall questline. I just found this gameplay loop to be a ton of fun. Exploring dungeons while using my own shouts, finding new shouts in those dungeons, and then enhancing them even further with resonating stones. But a bit later on into the questline, you'll learn about the even more powerful chants. These will require a new melee item to use. You actually have to have this in your hand as you're shouting, but it gives you the ability to quickly chain together 3 different shouts in rapid succession. So basically, you shout, use this melee item, and then can immediately shout again with the second shout in the chant, and then once more for the third and final shout in the chant. This of course can be incredibly powerful, basically 3 shouts on a near instant cooldown that you could use back to back to back. Early on, you do get a fixed chant that you could just use during the quest, but after the questline completes, you can create your own overpowered combinations of chants and use them for the rest of the game. And over the course of this questline, you're not even just learning new abilities. There's also going to be a wide array of new armors and weapons that will perfectly synergize with these new abilities. So if you do want to adventure around Skyrim as a bard and really adopt that playstyle, this DLC will give you all of the tools you need to do that and actually make it a very powerful playstyle. And while this was definitely the main part of the mod, the shouts, chants, and interactions with Sledrig and Helvana, it's also far from everything, because at the end of the day, this is the Bards College Expansion, and learning new things becomes a cornerstone of the experience with this new DLC. In addition to Sledrig, there's going to be several other new teachers that you can learn new abilities from. You have some quests around just playing music. You'll first have to find the instruments, just like in vanilla Skyrim, but from there, you could become a full-on bard now. Learn new songs and play music in public or private, and this is not just for looks. Playing music on the streets will attract spectators that will clap and pay attention to you, and these spectators can actually donate gold to you for your efforts. And this was not done haphazardly, as totally custom music was added and created just for this DLC. But if you do have plenty of gold, you can also play music around allies or even just yourself for some character buffs. This works in a pretty similar way to Fallout games, where you basically just have to play music for long enough for the buff to be applied to your character, and then it'll apply to both your character and your allies for a set amount of time. I was getting a nice stamina boost for 15 minutes. While one half of the skill tree really focuses on shouts and chants, the other half really focuses on this aspect, allowing you to earn even more gold from playing music or even enhance your abilities further with some of those buffs. But in addition to just playing music yourself, you can also have songs written and sung about you. One of the cool parts about the Bards College Expansion is it works on both a new game or an older save, and depending on which you have, you'll have different options open to you, such as with ballads. After finishing up some of the earlier quests, you can speak to another new NPC about having a ballad made. This will commemorate a major accomplishment that you made in Skyrim, such as completing one of the major faction or DLC questlines, including this new Bards College questline. So basically, as you're talking to this NPC, DLC, you can choose which verses will be sung in the song to document what happened over your journey. You can make this happy or sad, exaggerated, or surprisingly humble. And well, like, yeah, just having ballads created about what you did is generally cool. This actually does have some in-game benefits. You can occasionally find bards in town singing these ballads about you, and the more ballads you have about you, the bigger discount you'll get at vendors, and even your intimidation will be boosted from your renown. You can also duel other bards with this DLC. This is not with your fists, and instead with your wit. A duel of wits is a new mechanic that'll be introduced by one of the early quests. You'll take in other bards in various taverns over Skyrim, where you'll basically insult each other and then try and come up with the best retort that also happens to be a pretty good play on words. We are bards after all. Just like all the other mechanics, you're also introduced to this one via the questline, but after that initial interaction, in basically every tavern in Skyrim, you can find bards willing to duel you, or even sometimes unwilling to duel you because you're too much of a novice. Get experienced enough, and even some bards will seek you out for a duel. And this mechanic actually has a lot of depth to it. You can get background on good insults, actually learning more retorts over time, so you could have better comebacks against other bards. The culture of who you're dueling is relevant here, because obviously depending on culture, some insults will be more effective or less effective, and by succeeding at these, you'll win gold and prestige for your character. But if you're just interested in using your words to manipulate others, you can also become an emissary of the Bards College in an official capacity. This is another really cool mechanic where you basically use different verbal approaches to get something out of another person, with each quest having a bit of a different goal. Early on, I was mediating what to do with a farm while trying to convince them to sell to who was my real client. I had a task to piss off another spy as much as possible so they'd blow their cover, or even just straight up flattery with some characters. And the simplest way to describe this mechanic is as a verbal puzzle. It almost gave me LA Noire vibes. Basically, you need to read the NPC or first get some background information on them to be successful. Because as you're interacting with them and trying to get something out of them, whether that be information or persuasion, you have very distinct speech options. You could be whimsical, you can try and intimidate them, you could just be dramatic and over the top. But depending on who that character is, these will either be very successful or not successful at all, and you could blow up this entire quest. Like in this example, I could not convince these people to sell their farm. So as I returned to the Bards College, I get a lesser reward, and just generally they were a bit disappointed in me.
So you sat in an inn, achieved nothing, and are now expecting some sort of reward or praise? But I suppose it could have been worse. I may even be able to persuade the client that it was worthwhile. Here, take this and be thankful.
You'll get more gold the better the outcome you get, and there are quite a few quests like this. It's honestly quite a bit of fun. And yeah, that's a rough overview of what you can expect from the Bards College Expansion for Skyrim. To me, this is just a DLC, and honestly one of the better DLCs for Skyrim, particularly because it's just indistinguishable from the base game. There are a lot of players out there that would not be able to recognize that this wasn't always in Skyrim. It's that high quality and has that much of a natural flow with the rest of the game. It truly feels like and plays like an official DLC. And with a $10 price tag, I honestly think this one's going to be worth it for a lot of people out there. You're getting 10 to 20 hours of incredibly high quality new content, and particularly because there are so many new mechanics introduced with this one. It feels like one of those mods or DLCs that just pays dividends over the course of an entire playthrough. You can truly just play the game like a bard now, attempting a completely different build path compared to typical. So now, of course, there are lots of people out there who just never want to pay for a mod. Doesn't matter how high quality it is, there's a ton of high quality free mods that are DLC sized also. But to me, this feels like a really important moment in Skyrim modding because it felt like the first time the price and amount of content have actually made a lot of sense. But don't just take my word for it. Wait for further reviews, wait for other people to spend their money on this and see how it is, because I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think a lot of those other reviews will also be positive. And it's also important to keep in mind, this is just the start. King Gath Creations is planning more content like this as they're basically establishing a development studio to create content like this for Skyrim, potentially even Starfield in the future. And there are other teams as well. Eleonora just shared some images of another DLC-sized creation on the way with a tale of blood and snow. This is being made by Darth Vitriol and others, as we're basically seeing modders turn into mini dev teams with this new creation system, and it does look very promising, price dependent. Truth and Legends is another upcoming creation. This will feature Mjolnir and Thor from Norse mythology, coming of course with a weapon itself, but also a shield, and as well as a totally custom armor and a new dungeon. And at least as of right now, it's definitely becoming a bit harder to just say all of these paid mods are crap and should be ignored. We're actually starting to get some good ones that may even be worth the money.